Dr. Gina Simmons Schneider is the author of Frazzle Brain. Break free from anxiety, anger, and stress using advanced discoveries in neuropsychology. She's a licensed psychotherapist, executive coach, and corporate trainer. She serves as co-director of Schneider Counseling and Corporate Solutions. Dr. Schneider is a coping skills expert with more than 25 years of experience helping people regulate difficult emotions and conflicts. She has been quoted in the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, and the San Diego Union Tribune. Dr. Schneider blogs for Psychology Today and writes the award-winning Manage Anger Daily blog. She has blogged for Forbes and Women in Crime Inc., which the Wall Street Journal named a blog worth reading. Dr. Schneider provides training for Fortune 500 companies and other organizations online throughout San Diego County. We were fortunate and much appreciative that Dr. Schneider took some time to share her work with us. This is a great interview, y'all. Enjoy. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Earrings Off. We want to invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. You can find us on Facebook at Earrings Off Podcast and on Instagram at The Earrings Off Podcast.
Welcome to Earrings Off. I'm Lou.
And I'm Teresa. Let's get started.
We have with us today Dr. Gina Simmons Schneider. We are so excited to have you with us today and definitely look forward to today's conversation. Welcome to Earrings Off.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Teresa. It's a pleasure.
We are going to jump right in. Okay, Frazzle Brain. What inspired you to write Frazzle Brain, and what is Frazzle Brain?
Well, I'm a psychotherapist, so I do a lot of work with in our business during COVID went up like 40%. I mean, we were just slammed. Mental health crisis in our country in the last few years. So the key word everyone was saying is, I'm frazzled. I'm frazzled. We see all these TikTok videos of people having meltdowns in Trader Joe's and crying in the aisles, and they're not toddlers, they're grown-ups.
Right.
People are beyond their coping skills and going through a lot. So as a psychotherapist over the years, I've recommended a lot of self-help books. I use self-help books all the time with my clients because they're really helpful. However, a lot of the books on anxiety, anger, and stress, there really wasn't a book that combined these three, sort of the three-headed monsters, what I call it, anxiety, anger, and stress, that is really the driving force for a lot of out of control human behavior and a lot of interpersonal conflicts. A lot of interpersonal conflicts happen as a result of anxiety, anger, and stress sort of combining in our nervous system and narrowing our perception, clouding our judgment, making us feel foggy-headed, and yet at the same time we're feeling this pressured sense of urgency, like we have to do something. So frazzle brain is really this combination of feeling pressured, feeling distressed, feeling also a little bit of fatigue. And then there's this cloudy headed, our brain doesn't feel like it's functioning at 100%. When I looked into neuropsychology research, I went, there's a book here. We need to teach people how to get our brains working more effectively and how to manage these and cope with these really extreme emotions that we're feeling. And there are really great, easy ways to do that if we aim our attention, our mental attention in the direction of coping as opposed to amplifying our suffering with a lot of the behaviors that tend to amplify it. So a lot of the behaviors that tend to amplify our suffering are being stuck in this idea that, like, for example, we can get stuck on the idea that this is terrible. What's happening to me is terrible, and it's a catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
Once we're stuck on defining something that way, we've narrowed our options, right? We're immediately going, oh, catastrophe, right? And so they've even shown in the laboratory that if they got these brave volunteers to volunteer to watch these distressing movies, and then they showed where our eyes go in a had us look in a box, and they found that when we were seeing movies about love and compassion and caring and good feelings, our eyes wander a wider pathway, and we literally see more than in front of us. But when we're feeling anxious and stressed and afraid and nervous, we get a very binary view of the world. It's like safe or unsafe. And our eyes actually go a very limited pathway in our visual field. And so we're literally getting less information. So we're less effective when we're under the influence of frazzle brain, or this anxiety, irritability, and stress. So I realized also that some of the books I would recommend to people, uh, some great books, but the first few chapters would be checklists and assessments, and they'd be full of a lot of symptoms. Are you having trouble sleeping at night? Do you feel like pressured? Do you feel like you can cope, or you're beyond your coping skills? And so once people are reading all these symptoms, they start feeling even more. And so a lot of my clients would be like, I can't read this book. It's too stressful to read this book. So I wanted to write a book for people that gave you a place to rest and actual coping skills right from the first chapter. You're getting coping skills. And I don't shy away from talking about the hard things because people are traumatized now. There's a lot of trauma in our world, right?
Yeah.
And people are overwhelmed by it, right? We have the trauma of what's happening in our own personal lives. Then we have the secondary trauma of watching other people going through trauma, because it's now on our phone. Right. We're seeing people getting killed. We're seeing horrifying things that we didn't ask to see, and they're causing us some secondary trauma, even though we don't know this person. We're feeling traumatized by it. So what do we need? We need coping skills. We need ways of managing the distress so that we can be effective and go on with our lives. And so I don't recommend to people, putting our heads in the sand and hiding from reality and not looking at the bad stuff, but instead going, okay, one of the things that helps me, for example, with the collective trauma of what's been going on in the world is recognizing that this is part of human history, and it always has been part of human history.
That is so true. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's something a bit comforting about that, to know that there are always going to be, like Mr. Rogers talks about, the helpers in the world. There are always helpers. And then there are always going to be people who are abusers. And there are always going to be people who are mentally ill. And there are always going to be people who are exceptionally helpful. And then, all kinds of folks. And so I think our safety comes from aligning with the helpers, and in keeping ourselves as healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically as we can, so that we can cope with life better and fulfill our potential, whatever that might be, wherever we've landed in the world, right? We want to be able to, I don't know, one of my beliefs is that we're all individuals for a reason. There is no other Lou or Teresa, on the planet. You're unique. And, your podcast is unique. What you bring to the world is unique. And I do think that is our purpose is to be more fulfilling whatever our potential is. So as a mental health professional, that's my overriding mission for people, is to help you align your behavior more in healthy ways so that you can, fulfill yourself. And sometimes that means getting out of an abusive relationship. Sometimes that means taking care of your physical health because you're going through cancer or something difficult. And sometimes that means just managing your emotions because your emotions have become unmanageable.
Mm-hmm.
So the book is really for managing those difficult emotions.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Okay.
So, what are some surprising ways that you found to manage stress?
You know what is really astounding to me, the longer I've been in this business, is the power of our thoughts and the words that we use to describe what we're going through. And the new neuroscience research, there's so much interesting research on the power of our mind to literally change our hormones. There was this interesting milkshake study that was done in 2008 by a researcher at Stanford. And she designed this beautiful, elegant, simple study, but basically she had the same group of people come into the laboratory on 2 different occasions, and their task was to drink a milkshake and evaluate it and rate it. Unbeknownst to the subjects, they drank the exact same milkshake that was 380 calories each time, but they were given a fake label. The first time they were given a label that said, this is a 620 calorie indulgent milkshake. And they were submitted to physiological measures. So they took blood work before, during, and after. And then the second time they came into the lab, they got the exact same milkshake again. It was 380 calories. And then they were told that this is a sensible shake of 140 calories, and they were to rate it, and so on and so forth. So both times they saw a milkshake with a fake label. And they rated it, and then they were given physiological measures. And then they found out one of the measures that they looked at is the hormone ghrelin, which is a hormone that goes up and down depending on how hungry we are. So if we're hungry, ghrelin levels go up. If we've eaten our Thanksgiving dinner, drops dramatically. We're not hungry for a long time after that, right? So the people who did this thought they were drinking 620 calories. Their ghrelin levels dropped precipitously. The people who thought they were getting 140, like light snack, like cheese and cracker or something, their ghrelin levels remain level. Their hormones remain level, as if their expectations, their thoughts, their beliefs about what they were drinking controlled their hormones, not the actual calories they consumed. So there's a whole body of research showing. There's another study they did with peanut allergies. And they had kids that were in a study for a medication that would help them, kids with peanut allergies, that would help them not have that really severe allergic response to the peanuts, right? The potentially deadly response. So they randomly divided them into groups, the parents and the kids of one group that got the same medication. One group was told, if you get non-dangerous side effects to the medication, that means that it's working and it's helping. The other group of kids that got the same medication, they and their parents were told, you may have some non-dangerous side effects. And then they measured how their immune systems responded to the medication. And the group that was told that the side effects meant that it was working had a better response to the medication, better immune response.
Wow.
They had lower levels of anxiety. And it was interesting because they even in the study, they had videotapes of the interviews with the kids, and the kids were even telling other kids, oh, you have a side effect, that just means it's working.
Wow.
So it's changed how and they're recommending, there's a whole bunch of studies like this that are absolutely startling, but it's also changed the way I do therapy, because the power of our beliefs over our nervous system and over how our immune system responds is extremely much more powerful than we've ever thought. They even did a study with maids, motel. They looked for years. This was one that was done years ago by Ellen Langer and Aaliyah Crum, and these women come up with these ingenious studies. Anyway, they were looking for a group of people that get a lot of physical activity but don't think they exercise, because they wanted to try this power of suggestion kind of idea on them, the power of belief, the power of ideas. They call it placebo effect, basically, or placebo effect. And so they found a group of hotel motel maids, because they obviously do physical labor all day long, walking up and down to, changing sheets, bending over, picking things up all day long. They work very hard physical labor, but none of them think they get enough exercise, right? Because who has time to exercise, and who has the energy to exercise when you do that for a living, right? Plus, you don't have enough money probably to buy a gym membership, or you're working already really hard. You're tired if you have a family. That this is what a lot of people's work-life balance is like. You just don't have time to exercise, but you are getting plenty of exercise. So they did physiological measures before, during, and after. For all these women, they randomly divided them into two groups. One group, they told that their jobs met the Surgeon General's requirement for a healthy exercise, for a healthy amount of exercise. And the other group was just given some neutral message. It had nothing to do with the suggestion that they got enough exercise. And what they found after a month is the group that believed that they got a healthy amount of exercise, they actually lost weight.
Wow.
Their blood pressure went down. Their measures of health went down. Their waistline went down. Just from believing that they got enough exercise, right? That was the only difference between the two groups that did the same job. So there's a whole bunch of these kinds of studies out there that are getting me thinking so much about, how am I thinking about what I'm doing? So it's gotten me to the point where even if I'm taking vitamins, I just say, thank you, vitamins, for helping make my body strong and healthy. It sounds silly and a little woo-woo, but actually accepting the medication, if we accept the medication as healing, if we reduce our anxiety, it has health benefits. If we aim our mind towards positive interpretations of what's going on, as opposed to the disastrous sort of uh-oh feeling that we can get when we're feeling anxious, that it has some health benefits to it.
Well, I tell you, when you were talking earlier about when something happens, if we immediately, characterize it as that's a catastrophe, that's traumatic, you have sort of boxed yourself in and eliminated options, because where do you go from there? Right. Yeah. So
right, Lou. It's like it's a lot of what I do day in and day out with people. Is I'll hear people say, oh my God, it was horrible. The gym is so crowded today. And I'm like, no, that's not horrible. There's no horror. There's no Freddy Krueger, right? With us.
Right.
It's just inconvenient. It was just an inconvenience, that there were so many people at the gym. Right. So I think that it's okay. We sometimes use hyperbole, right, to be colorful with our language, but if we're careful.
Well, and language is so powerful. that we have to pay attention to the words that we're speaking, because what I'm hearing you say is that we're internalizing that and our body is reacting to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly. I'm becoming better at being more accurate in my internal descriptions of reality, and not and I'm becoming better because I'm trying to learn all this stuff so I can teach it to my clients too. And um, but I'm noticing that as soon as I can take things down a few notches in my mind, it's changed also the way I behave. Like, for example, I don't get any of my news from television. I get all my news from print media that I either read online, or I actually get one paper and I read a couple of other newspapers online. And I don't spend a lot of time listening to the 24-hour news cycle where they're extrapolating their opinions, because what are those opinions? They're catastrophizing.
yeah.
They're usually catastrophizing because that sells more soap.
Right.
It keeps you riveted, but it also keeps your nervous system churned up in fear and outrage. And
Yeah.
so we're in this climate of this outrage, this constant outrage, which is sort of dripping stress hormones constantly into our bloodstream,
Right.
which is, part of what's causing the mental health epidemic. Um, and it's also not good for our physical health. So I've changed the way I behave in terms of how I consume what I choose to listen to.
Mhm.
Am I
Yeah.
listening to the helpers? Am I
Yeah.
listening to the helpers?
Yeah.
Or am I
Yeah.
listening to the alarmists? Or am
Right.
I listening to the hate mongers? No, I'm not giving them any of my time.
Right. I hear you. I'm doing the same thing. I'm being very mindful about what I allow to seep in, you know? Yeah.
It's healthier. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's healthier.
So, the pandemic has triggered a lot of social anxiety for folks. What are some ways that people can break free of social anxiety?
I think it's an interesting thing. We've gotten out of practice with, and I saw this happen years ago when I had my first child and my friends were starting to have babies. And I had a friend who was like this super high powered businesswoman that traveled internationally. And she's home for a year with a baby, takes a year off. And she says, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm nervous going to the grocery store now, you know, because here she's a person that could fly on a plane to Dubai and do all this stuff that, most people would find a little intimidating. Um, and she had no problem. But after a year being at home with a baby, she found that her world had gotten smaller, right? So one of the things I tell people is that what you're feeling is temporary. And remember that when we're out of practice with something, that doesn't mean we can't do it. It just means we're out of practice, right?
Mhm.
And my husband and I and our friends would even talk about, like we just went to a movie theater over the Christmas holiday break for the first time in a couple of years. We haven't been to a movie theater, and we were the only people there. But it was a weird feeling to be at a movie theater. It was
Yeah.
weird, and
Yeah.
and it was kind of like, you know unfamiliar. But how we characterize that feeling is the language you're using to describe it. We have a choice about the language we're going to use to describe this uncomfortable feeling. We can call it social anxiety, right? I'm nervous about going to a party where I don't know anybody. Where am I going to be safe with COVID? Should I go? There's all these internal conflicts. And so, what I've found that helps people is if you have COVID concerns, let's address those concerns, because a lot of people still have very very serious concerns health-wise about COVID because they are immune compromised, because they may have a pre-existing condition, because they're of a certain age where it could be still be risky. So I encourage them to have boundaries around what they will and won't do, and just be very clear on that. So if they are going to socialize with people, have clear boundaries. Maybe you still need to do masks and outdoors or outdoor events without masks, right? Maybe you still need to ask people to do some of these precautions to protect your health. Maybe you still need to ask if you're going to go to a gathering that everyone test first. Those are all still reasonable things to ask if that lowers your anxiety and allows you to be part of a group. But for others, it's just we're out of practice. We're out of practice, and so it feels awkward. It feels unfamiliar. So I always encourage people that if it is something very important to you, you want to go to this thing, but you don't like the discomfort, the only way you're going to get over the discomfort is to do it anyway.
Right.
Right. You know, it's kind of like, how do you get over the fear of falling off a horse? Well, you fall off a horse a lot. You know, how do you get over the fear of public speaking? You do a lot of public speaking. And you have everything go wrong. Like I've had everything go wrong, including wardrobe malfunctions.
Oh my goodness.
Literally everything could possibly go wrong. Right. And you go, oh wow, I survived that. I didn't die.
Yeah.
And in fact, none of those people remember that, you know, I had to safety pin my pants and, you know, because my zipper broke. And, you know, I remember what happened, but the people that I was speaking in front of probably don't even remember, right? So how do we get over it? Well, sometimes we do need a therapist's help or some encouragement, and we need some people do need some little systematic ways that they can make their world a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
And then a little bit bigger, and then a little bit bigger, so you don't feel overwhelmed, right? So I recommend that people do little short things, like if you have a fear of public speaking, do a Toastmasters group where you get little 1-minute opportunities to talk with people, and then you little by little they teach you how to be more effective as a speaker. Well, the same thing with COVID anxiety. Or social anxiety coming out of COVID. And I've worked with a lot of parents of children our children are having a really hard time now. And they need everything we can give them and help them with, because they went through a lot through COVID too, and a lot of stress, and a lot of them are having trouble re-entering. And so sometimes they do need treatment, which helps again teach them coping skills for opening their world just a little bit at a time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So you've talked a bit about, you know, the power of the mind, right? And can you talk a little bit about positive emotions and like how awe and wonder can help to heal trauma?
Yes, and that's a really important chapter. It's one of my favorite chapters in the book, because it's really about how we can intentionally cultivate positive emotions. And if you think about the deadly disease of depression, which is life-threatening for some people, right? Some people commit suicide based on depression, right? Yeah. We have seen suicide rates, you know, going up. What is the opposite of depression? Well, it's joy, the ability to generate positive emotions. So we really need to place great importance on generating positive emotions like mild joy and contentment. And we can do that intentionally. And there is really interesting evidence, physiological evidence, psychophysiological evidence of the healing impact of the feeling of awe and wonder that you might experience. I experience awe and wonder in nature a lot. A spectacular waterfall. You just feel the force of the water and the coolness and just the majesty of it all, this beautiful, spectacle that is nature, looking at the stars. And if you're in a place with not a lot of light pollution and just contemplate the universe and how massive it is and how just contemplating a light year is awe-inspiring. The distance that light travels in a year. It's just like, how do you get your mind around that? It can be awe-inspiring to watch great athletes or musicians, right? And you watch an incredible soccer
Mm,
game or football game or performance, or
mhm,
I love watching great theater, great
mhm.
musical theater, too, and just how did they do that? How did they make that magic happen? So you feel this feeling of awe, and what studies show is that feeling of awe and wonder lowers inflammation in our
Yeah.
nervous system.
Mhm, mhm,
It boosts our immune system. It can help us heal.
mhm.
And just even 2 hours of being in a forest has a 30-day antidepressant effect.
Wow.
30 days.
Wow.
Um, so that is amazing, right? So if we can, instead of thinking of this as a sort of a, we only once a year do something on vacation maybe, and we only, let ourselves have these moments of awe and wonder once we get all our work done and we get all the serious things done, and we just like put it in the back burner as, not very important. I suggest we make it really important, that we have things to look forward to
Right.
on a regular basis
Mhm.
that can generate a sense of awe and wonder.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is so powerful. I
Mhm.
recently got to I love the symphony. And I
Mm.
recently got
Mm.
to hear Yo-Yo Ma. And I tell you,
Mm.
when I
Oh,
tell you I that his performance for weeks after that, and my husband, who did not want to go, he talked about that constantly. He's still talking about it because just what we witnessed that night,
oh.
him, it's just amazing.
And
So,
he radiates love too. I mean, I think his
yeah,
performances, I don't know how he does it, but every time I see him, I just feel this washing over of just love and
yeah,
joy, and just it's powerful what he can do with that
absolutely.
cello.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
just so gifted. So, but we wanted to talk to you a little bit about neuroplasticity
Mm.
because it describes the brain's ability to adapt and change itself. And one of my favorite books, I keep it near so I can refer to it or remember. I read this years ago, but it had such an impact on me. And it's The Brain That Changed Itself by Norman Dodge.
So yeah, he's
And
incredible. Yeah, that's a
I,
great book.
oh, I mean, it is. And I, not being, a medical doctor, but I am telling you, I understood what he was saying in that book, the power of the brain and how it can change itself and change the body. So talk to us a little bit about that, please.
When you think about it, our brain, our capacity to learn is a neuroplastic capacity, right? So uh, our brain is designed to continually be an adapting organism, which means if we are living our life, we are constantly learning anyway, but we can intentionally harness that, which is the exciting part, right? Instead of just feeling like life just happens to us, I went to first grade, second grade, third grade, I graduated, I just kind of did these things I'm supposed to do. Well, we can also take it a step further and go, well, what else do I want to be able to do? Do I want to be able to play the cello? Do I want to be able to um, cope better with the suffering that's going on in my life? All of the answer to a lot of that is yes. It's yes, and there are ways we can do that. And what's interesting too is you think about, we're all, as animals, we really start out as wild animals. We're just wild creatures. And we are shaped by our environment and wherever we land. Did we land in a place that taught us things and allowed us to grow to our full potential, or did we land in this sort of desert wasteland where we're not necessarily getting everything that we need? Once you're at a place of awareness, you can start to choose what influences do you want to have on your brain. And those are really important choices. And that might mean that we break out of bad habits, right? We know, for example, that television is a negative hypnotic. Within about 40 seconds of watching television, your brain is in this suggestible state, and you are absorbing all of those homicides and all of those scary, suspenseful, terrible things. And even if you're only watching the nature channel, you're probably still getting commercials that are all full of things that are manipulating you. And is that where you want your brain to go, right? So being selective, like you were saying, Lou, is really important, because you are then, whatever your mind rests upon, your neurons wire there. Your brain is adapting to whatever you're exposing it to. So I was talking to a gentleman who came from like special forces, and he's one of those people that's seen a lot of awful things in his life, a lot of war, a lot of ugly stuff on a huge scale. And he's reading one of these page turning novels. And I'm like, okay, this is your nervous system is all wound up because your work involves looking at all the dangerous things going on in the world. And your attention is on all of those strategies around dealing with some of the most dangerous things going on in the world. How about in your free time when you're on an airplane, you rest your brain and read something different, read something that's more, that can allow you to rest, We had this really interesting discussion about that. But what happens sometimes when we become hyper focused on danger, and a lot of people who are first responders and who deal with danger and things like that every day, I've worked with a lot of those, and we did trainings for the FBI and emotion and anger management and stuff. And a lot of these folks on their free time are also watching all of the scary, bad, hard stuff, and that's all they're getting in. They're only getting in, all of this stuff. And my suggestion is always to give yourself a rest from that, thankful to you for doing that work, grateful for those people thinking about all the strategies we need to be thinking about to keep us safe. 24/7, though, it's not healthy. It's good to give yourself a rest from that, because whatever your mind rests upon, then that's all you see, right? Then that's all you're going to see is danger and threat around every corner. And most of the time that's not really necessary.
Right. Wow. Okay. Well, those are all of the questions that we have for you. Again, thank you so much for joining us today here at Earrings Off. And again, we're here with Dr. Gina Simmons-Snyder. It has been our pleasure to talk with you. Please share with our audience how they can contact you and your information, please. And any parting words you might have for them.
Oh, of course. I love to hear from people if they want to ask me questions or contact me. Frazzlebrain.com. It's real easy. One word, Frazzlebrain, just like it sounds. And you can contact me there. I'm all my social media links are on there too. So if you want to follow me, I post articles. I write for Psychology Today, so I'm always writing about neuroplasticity and how to be happier and how to cope better and with all the hard things we have to deal with in life. So yeah, I would totally love to hear from anybody, and I always respond. I will get back to you if you have a question or a comment.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us here at Earrings Off. So you take good care.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Teresa. It's a pleasure meeting you both.